Hey, what's up, man? Good.
How
How are
are
you?
you?
Good, Brandon. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for sitting down and doing this, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be here.
How are things out in California?
Good, man. Just back for a couple weeks between races. Just got back from Tour de Gila, headed to Joe Martin and next week, and then getting back, and I'm moving to a new apartment, so things are
Busy.
always moving, man. Yeah. How,
Always moving. Well, I appreciate you making time to do this even more. It's you got a million things going on. This is will
well,
be super beneficial though for so many people listening because you're just at the pointy end of almost every race that you do, and I've really enjoyed following you because you Well, I'm going to ask you some of these questions of like the gravel and road. You crush both. And so I think that mystifies some people. And I'm curious what you do for training to stay on top of that. And the travel is a whole other thing. So that actually, let's just jump into that. Like, how do you balance gravel and road, or do you see them overlapping because of your strengths and how you race in both?
they I think the fitness required overlaps a lot. Just yeah, I mean, I guess because of my sort of natural strengths between gravel and road. So I really try to um narrow down my road calendar to just the stuff I really want to do, which is the longer, harder stage races and
Mm,
longer single day races. So this year the only road stuff that I'm doing is for the Gila, Joe Martin, and Pro Nats.
mm,
And I'll do a couple crits in Salt Lake as well as sort of a sponsorship obligation.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, the hard stage races like Joe Martin and Gila, where you have back to back long road races, and Pro Nats obviously a super hard road race that that sort of is a relatively similar type of fitness that you need for the things like Belgian Waffle and Gravel Worlds and Unbound.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this tell you would know better. Do you feel like you're known so much for gravel worlds that people don't even know that you've done all? I mean, you've won stages in Latin America, and it's gravel worlds is probably like the biggest thing that shines over you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Winning it twice,
That's
so it's
the yeah
pretty.
that's yeah. I'm real proud of that one for sure. It's an honor. And definitely the American cycling community. I mean, what for to whatever extent people know me, it's probably mostly for that. And the I was on the podium at Belgian Waffle a couple years ago, and Mid South this year. So that and because of the place that gravel has in the cycling scene in the US, so that's definitely I would imagine that's what I guess what people know me for. If people know me, those
Dude,
people.
people know you, man. People they should know you, or maybe you can sneak under the radar if they don't. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you're well known, John. It's so how do
Thanks, man.
you I was looking at you're coached, are you still coached by Endurance CPT? Is there PCT out in is it California he's located?
Yeah. Tim Fleming is it's the performance training center, the endurance PTC.
Cool. So how do
Yeah.
you guys does he craft everything for you, or what do you as an experienced rider, you've been doing this for I think like over 8 years. How does that work together, and what's sort of like the feedback that you give him to help him get you ready for these big races?
Um, yeah, he does give me workouts on the daily. And I follow them as best I can. Not always to a T, like the schedule is busy and things come up, and there's always injury and sickness and travel and other obligations and stuff. But we've been working together for 4 years now. So we have a close relationship, and we both know each other real well at this point, which is super helpful. And so he's as much a mentor and a friend as he is someone I pay to coach me. Um, but actually, most of the training is based off of the results of the inside um,
Mm,
power protocol testing that they
mm,
do. So that's you know I do a field test to try to get an accurate measure of my VO2 max and my VOA max and my anaerobic threshold, fat max, carb max, all that stuff. And we try to gear the training to balance those metrics as best we can, with the goal of having the right type of fitness for events like Unbound and Gravel Worlds, which are definitely the biggest fish on my calendar.
Okay, that's awesome. So then how do you, because one thing that, and I sort of, as an amateur guy, when I first started getting into gravel, people were like, oh, it's just like really long and it's really long. And then I went to my first few gravel races. I was like, whoa, they started full gas. And so I think it's confusing for some people when they first start gravel racing. How do you guys balance you obviously have to be able to ride really far, but I think it's fair to say you also have to go pretty darn hard if you want to be at the front of the race. So how do you see that for yourself? Like, do you love long rides? You just sprinkle in some intensity through the workouts that you guys do with Inside, or like how does that balance happen? Because it's probably pretty tricky.
Yeah, really good question. This year I got started a little bit later on my big training block, not until really like the second week of January. So what Tim ended up having me do was about a 6-week build of almost all base miles in sort of that mid zone 2, upper zone 2. So about, in the neighborhood of like 60% of functional threshold. I was doing maybe 20 to 22 hours a week at that pace. Maybe one workout a week, I would do some like sort of a light VO2 set just to sort of open up that system, I guess, but not like a full gas, 30-minute, 20 or 30 minutes at VO2. This is more like 10 or 12 minutes at VO2 and sort of like a one on, one off style of set. And I was also doing 2 days a week in the weight room. But really it was just like almost exclusively just that endurance pace. And I'm, really trying to be focused about hitting the middle of that zone for as long as possible and keeping a, steady cadence over 90 RPMs for the whole time, really just to, the goal of that is, obviously it increases your endurance. Doing big, 4 or 5 hour rides back to back is a great way to train for the really long races without, putting yourself in so much debt that you can't recover in a reasonable amount of time. But it also is a good way to boost your VO2 max. And my best understanding of that is by increasing mitochondrial density with the the long hours at that endurance pace, or like some people call it aerobic threshold. You're sort of teaching yourself to be a fat burner, and that also somehow helps just increase your aerobic capacity overall. So without doing a lot of really high intensity stuff, I think I did get a pretty decent boost in my VO2 max compared to where I was in the off season. But nevertheless, like I showed up to Mid-South and just went, without having raced at all this year, just went full tilt from the gun. Ended up, cramping real bad, like 3 hours into the race, even though, it wasn't hot and thought I was eating and drinking enough, but my muscles just weren't ready for like, 3 hours threshold or whatever, so. I think that, that I'm not sure if my coach would agree that was the reason I cramped, but I think, that there's definitely a place in training for doing those really high intensity intervals, and especially for people who are doing like lower volume training plans, it's you definitely got to get some of those kind of reps in too.
I was rooting for you in the finish, man. It was, and I had read something that was talking about cramping. I was like, that sucks that he cramped at the end of that. I didn't realize it was 3 hours in. So kudos
Yeah.
for being all the way there,
Yeah.
John, at the end when you were having quite a rough day midway through that thing. That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
thanks, man.
You guys survived that clay. I think I still have some on a bike somewhere from that race like 5 years ago. It's like, oh, here's the red clay from
Oh
Oklahoma.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned the gym. What are you doing in the gym? And you don't have to get like too granular, but I think a huge question that people always ask is like, do guys lift heavy? Do they lift medium? Do they lift light and high reps? And do they keep doing it during the season? Like, how does that unravel with your training?
Yeah. Sort of like I think this year it was about a 12-week plan was the goal. At the beginning, just yes, like light, high rep stuff just to get the joints and the tendons all accustomed to that sort of movement again. Then the first phase, I think about 3 or 4 weeks, do more in like I think I was doing 3 sets of 10 for each exercise, 1 day a week, and then 3 sets of 8. So that's, higher volume, I guess. And then, in the next phase was like sets of 8 and sets of 6. And then the last phase, like sets of 5, I think. So, sort of decreasing the number of reps and increasing the weight as as the season progressed. Depending on travel and stuff, I'll try to get in during the bulk of the racing. I'll try to get in a week or one session a week in the weight room,
It's gotta
just
be
to sort
tough
of
when you're,
maintain it.
yeah. Do you guys focus on heart rate or just power or both? And you had mentioned, trying when you're doing your big endurance blocks, like riding in the middle of zone 2,
Mhm.
RPE at all. What do you tap into the most?
This year I've just been doing power. I
Mm,
used to look at heart rate a lot, but Tim, my coach, didn't really, he'd never give me workouts based on heart rate. That was just sort of like a secondary metric to gauge, um, how fatigued I was, or if I had other factors going on, like altitude adjustment or dehydration
mm.
or whatever. But I've just had so many issues with those heart rate monitors, and like I hate living it. Like the last couple of years I've lived like 5 months on the road basically out of my van, and it's just like another thing that I don't want to have to worry about. So this year I haven't even looked at my heart rate. I feel like I've been doing this long enough that I can tell when I'm tired or when I'm blown. I don't need so like all my workouts are based on power, which is like obviously has a whole nother set of issues with power meters or all over the place I've found too. So, I do
Two
my
different
best.
bikes
I
can
mean, not
create
to get,
problems. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So I try to have like, I don't have the same power meter on my road bike and my gravel bike. So I think they're close, but I think it varies day to day, and who knows, man. It's just,
You're gonna save a
but
ton of Sorry, you're gonna save a ton of people like headache because people freak out and they're like, but the numbers aren't the exact same. Like it's never gonna be the same. Like you're overthinking
yeah,
it.
it's never the same, but you're probably within like 5 or 10%, and that's really close enough to be nailing your workouts anyway. So
I love
um,
that.
yeah.
What's switching off of like the specific training stuff? What's some of the best advice you've ever received over these years of cycling, of training, racing?
I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Well, let me ask you
I
a
mean,
different
I
way,
mean,
mate.
well,
Go
well,
ahead.
I mean, one of the things that I really focus on is like listening to my body and feeling, I'm not always like the most, that's something that I've had to work on to really get good at, to like, trying to feel you know, how, how I feel during a workout, and whether it's a good day to push harder or not, whether, when to take the time to rest, if I'm getting sore, when to do extra focus on flexibility
Mm,
or strength maintenance stuff, or um what what to eat and what makes me feel good and what I need to perform well, just trying to be in tune um, yeah, with how the body works, I guess.
This is awesome, man. One of the best guys in gravel is talking about how I hear this is how many variables go into finding success in this sport. And I think,
Hmm.
when I first started riding, a lot of newer riders, they want like the Bible, they want to read it, and then like a year they want to have it all figured out. And
Yeah.
they don't understand that John Borstelmann is still finding ways through this. So like to hear you say that is incredible. It's like really helpful for so many people. What do you can you go in on that a little bit more? Because I think one thing that stuck out was, when to push hard. And one thing that I'll talk to people about is when they might have a super busy schedule with work, a different type of, they got family and whatever. So it's not the travel that you have, but say you're traveling around and you have like Tuesdays open and that's the day you're supposed to go hard. Like you're just not feeling it. Or do you ever feel like, well, shoot, this is the opportunity. Like I got to do it. Or is it just like, hey, I don't feel good. I'm not doing it. Like it just didn't line up. Like, how do you go through that? Because I think as a lot of athletes, we see it on the calendar. It's like, I got to do this thing. And I don't know. How do you manage that in your head?
Um, yeah, usually I do try to go out and just start the workout.
Mm,
And I kind of tell myself that, well, if it doesn't go well, I don't have to finish it, or, it's not the end of the world if I don't hit the numbers exactly right. But a lot of times, like my coach knows better than me. And once I get started on that hard workout, I ended up feeling a lot better after the first interval or two, or a couple hours into the endurance ride. So yeah, usually I do just try to go out and
give it a shot.
get into it, unless like I know I'm actually sick
Yeah.
or injured or something. But if it's just like a fatigue thing, or like, maybe I didn't sleep super well the night before, like usually I do try to just get out there and at least start the workout just to see how I feel.
Yeah. Cool.
Um,
Is there anyone's training or racing that kind of intrigues you that you sort of have your eye on, or are you more just in your own dojo doing what you and Tim have and focused on your own thing?
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely interested in what other people are doing. I guess I don't talk to a whole lot of guys about it in depth. Um, but I mean, I guess the highest profile gravel racers these days, at least on Strava, would be Keegan and Finsty, and down in Tucson. Those guys do their crazy training blocks, and that's always yeah, intriguing to see how many miles those guys are doing.
Yeah.
And then and it looks like from what I can tell, it seems like there it is a lot of base. And they
Mhm.
probably do the racy group ride down there once a week, and I'm sure there's some other intervals sprinkled in. Um, but yeah, man, I mean, it's uh yeah, and I do train occasionally. I'll get to ride with Chris Blevins here in Slow. He
Oh,
just
sweet.
moved out, but yeah, he's got a little bit of a different plan doing. He's focusing on those shorter World Cup races,
Mhm.
as well as, of course, like he just won Cape Epic, which is crazy. Um, some of the interval sets that he tells me about are just like kind of mind boggling. Like he's doing whatever 5-minute repeats at 400 and something crazy watts, and doing that so many times that I'm just like, that's just insane. I can't believe you're doing that. Um, so it's, yeah, there is definitely a wide variety of plans, but I think for the gravel racers, for the it seems to be a volume focused um, strategy in general is the way to go.
I look at some of these races you guys do that, if I think of a race like 150 miles sounds long, but some like you guys doing Unbound and everything, it's just, whoo, that was a long day of racing, let alone riding a bike, which is wild. So yeah, the volume has to be in there somewhere, I'm sure. What do you
Yeah.
think is one of your weaknesses that you're trying to work on for this year? If you want to share it. If you don't, then we can pass.
uh yeah, honestly, I think um I mean, I guess in general, I don't know if you mean like specifically with racing or in general, but honestly, one thing I think that would help me a lot is getting on a better a more strict sort of sleep schedule and meal schedule. You know, I think like that's definitely a thing that's, you know, been proven in scientific research to help people minimize stress and like maybe increase athletic performance, is to have like, you know, same bedtime, same wake up time, similar meal times every day. So that's something I'm trying to work on, but it's that's never been easy for me. Like throughout my early 20s, I was always working in restaurants and doing, you know,
Wow.
getting off work at 11 p.m. or midnight, and, you know, maybe hitting the bar afterwards. So there's, you know, I've never been much of a, you know, get up at 7 every day on the regular without an alarm. That's definitely not me. Even though I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to at least get, you know, move my life in closer to that direction.
Dude, that's awesome. I love the candor because that's just who I imagine. I'm like, John Borstelmann's like eating kale all day and just like doing yoga in the morning because he's
I
just this
do,
ripper.
yeah. Well, I do eat a lot of kale. I do like
Okay.
my vegetables, but
Wait,
I'm
actually,
I'm more likely to be eating the vegetables at 10 p.m. at night than I am at, you know,
funny quick
brunch time or
tangent.
whatever.
I think that's actually subconsciously in my mind because I think someone was talking about Vuelta Ecuador after you went, the year after we went, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, Borstelmann was talking about how much he misses kale." I think that was
It probably was, man. Yeah,
That's
that's my
so
biggest gripe with the Latin America races is the lack of
funny.
cruciferous vegetables, man.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Are you big into like tech and because of that you have a look right now if people aren't looking at these.
um, yeah, I'm sort of notorious as a Luddite, honestly.
Okay. So then
Slightly,
I'm
like I had to run, you know, my new Ventum road bike this year is an electronic only frame set, and I tried to do everything in my power to get them to drill extra holes for cables, and
no
they just
way.
couldn't do it. So
Why? Why do you want cables so badly?
I just like them better. I don't want to have to plug my bike into the wall. You know, there's I like at Belgian Waffle last year, my bike went into crash mode. DI2, and it went into crash mode, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it was. It was like my first race on that bike. Um,
Damn it.
you know, and I'd gotten the Shimano specifically because like I'd had so many problems with the SRAM front derailleurs on previous bikes. I was like, all right, great. I got my you know, this stuff is supposed to be the best. It's the most reliable. And then like, you know, 2 hours into the first race, I'm like 3 minutes on the side of the road trying to get
How'd you
this
figure it out? So for people that
bullshit.
don't know, before hold down the little circular button until it flashes and then start spinning the crank because it's gonna run up and down the cassette. And yeah, if you
I
don't know that,
mean,
it's yeah, you're screwed.
and it
Did somebody
depends
help you on the
which
side of the road?
there actually was a neutral service van like right next to the front group, so he helped me out, but he said he'd never seen that problem before.
Oh God.
um so yeah, so and you know, it depends on the generation of di2 that you have too.
Ah.
Like apparently I have the 12 speed on my new
Oh.
bike, and supposedly that one you just have to, they say you have to like shift all the way up the cassette and then all the way back down, and then it's fixed. But the old version, the 11 speed GRX, you had to um actually, yeah, you're supposed to maybe hold the button for a
Yeah.
certain number of seconds,
Five
but the biggest,
seconds.
but you didn't necessarily have to do that. The main thing that you had to do was manually shift the derailleur with your hand, which
Oh.
isn't exactly intuitive if you
No,
don't
not
know. And like
intuitive.
no, like it doesn't, there's no like, you know,
No.
sticker that comes on the derailleur that says like,
Yeah.
you know, if your derailleur gets stuck in the 11 cog, then you have to jam it in,
Yeah.
get it to fit. It's like what? You know,
And maybe it's just me being horrible at descending, but I don't ride a gravel bike often, and that happens to me maybe once every 30 rides. Like I hit something funky and it's just like, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? And I'm like, oh, I'm in crash mode. And first time
oh
it
really?
happened, but yeah, it happened to me just the other day. I was out in way out in the middle of nowhere. Thank God I knew where I was because it's this road Maple Sally in Pisgah National Forest. It's like you see some dirt bikes and some other random gravel people every once in a while, but Yeah, it's pretty deserted. So if I didn't know what was going, if it had not happened before, I would have maybe still be there right now. So thankfully that didn't happen. What's so what do you find is, you're got a busy schedule with riding, busy schedule with racing. What's your biggest inspiration to keep going forward? Because this sport is so hard. You're obviously finding a lot of success at it, but there's got to be times where you're just like, oh man, this is a lot. Like, how do you just keep pushing forward? And actually I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunately in the position like finally this year where I'm don't really have to have another gig at least during the race season. So I'm kind of all in on um traveling, racing, maintaining my equipment. Uh so that helps. I don't have a family, I don't have a job. This is my life, so that's yeah, that's a little easier to deal with. And I do love it. I love I love these events. Racing is still a huge motivator for me to get out of bed in the morning and to hit the road and train. And I love training too, man. Like I love
Mhm.
those long endurance rides. Like I especially living out here and on the Central Coast is um an amazing place to ride all winter long. So I'm pretty lucky in that regard, man. So yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything at this point.
That's
you know?
awesome. You mentioned you were in the van a lot. So do you have like a little, whatever people call it, sleeper van, camper van, where you could just, that's your headquarters?
In the yeah, I do. I rent an apartment here too, and I'm actually moving in with some friends so I can have that set up year round in the future. The last couple of years I've sublet my apartment to somebody else for the
Mhm.
summertime, and then
Mhm.
yeah, and then I've got this van that I built out a couple of years ago. It's like a big Ford Transit, like high roof. You can stand up inside. I've got nice bed in there. I've got a water system so I can do I've got a sink and a little outdoor shower in the back, a little camp stove, some solar panels and stuff. So yeah, like last summer I lived out of that thing for about 4 months, pretty much, give or take. Staying with people for here and there, like lodging the night before the race is always nice to have a hotel or a B&B or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, pretty much during like the summer race season when I'm trying to live at altitude and get those adaptations for all the Colorado races in August. Definitely living out of the van, and I'll be doing that again this year
Where
too,
do you
starting in
post up in
July.
Colorado?
Um, Anywhere with a toilet.
No, what? At no particular
So
city then? No particular
no,
city, any
I
particular
try to
alt?
be yeah, try to be away. Yeah, I mean, try to be away from the cities, as much as possible. And Colorado is great because there's, and the national forest campgrounds are the best, honestly, because they tend to be remote. There's the most of them at the high altitude places. They're not super packed or crowded like a KOA or whatever RV park. There's also a bunch of just like trailheads around. That the public lands are amazing that way. So yeah, trailheads where you can get away with parking overnight for a couple nights, and they usually have some sort of a pit toilet or something.
So
Fill
any
up my
just
water
anywhere high
whenever I can.
altitude?
Yeah, which is, in Colorado, there's a lot of places. There's a lot of high mountains there. So, I mean, last year I was, with Leadville, I've had a lot of bad like altitude sensitivity issues. So I was
Mhm.
like really like focused on like, all right, like every night for 2 months last summer, I slept at between 9 and 10,000 feet, which made training like pretty difficult. Like it's like the ideal situation is to sleep somewhere
Mm.
high and then get down to 5,000 feet or so you can still do your hard intervals and stuff during the day. So Yeah, that did take a big toll. But like my I mean, my favorite places are like the San Juan Mountains down near like Uray and Telluride is just spectacular, and
Mm.
um, the area around Crested Butte is amazing. Steamboat Springs, Leadville. There's I mean there's dozens of places. This year I think I'm going to try to sleep a little bit lower for my altitude block, maybe 7 to 8,000 feet, which will make it
Mm.
easier to get down to those lower elevations so I can train better.
Did that help being that high, or was it too high that it was just like rocked you a little bit?
I mean, it definitely rocked me a little bit, and I was hoping by being up there for so long that I'd be used to it in time for the race. But when I got to Leadville, I was like, that first effort was so hard, and I just like couldn't ride over. I was like stuck in my tempo zone the whole race. Like even on the big climbs, I couldn't get over zone 3 watts. I finished a long ways. I finished like an hour behind Keegan.
Wow.
Um, which is a little depressing. But then, I did lead boat too. So the next day I went to steamboat, and steamboat is a little lower. It's like, 65, 7,000 feet. And I was able to just, stupidly get in the breakaway right off the bat. And I was in the break with two other guys for the whole day. And we had a gap up to 8 minutes, 100 miles into the race. The
Dang.
day after Leadville. So I think
Yeah.
it definitely helped. The altitude definitely helped, but I don't know if it helped as much as if I'd just, done a normal load of training at sea level.
Right. 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 Dang. And it's
It's
tricky.
hard to it's hard to figure out all the different factors.
It really is. And how everybody's like so individualized and how it changes over time. And I know I can only show up and race. And by day three, I'm done. Like there's no like paddle. I was at Ecuador. Ecuador got slaughtered.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah. Oh my
had bent
God.
dropped. Was telling teammates were trying to wait. I'm like, guys, just go. This is like pathetic. Like I would have loved zone 3 watts. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was bad. It was bad.
Sure.
What's go ahead? Were you gonna say something?
Ecuador's gnarly. Yeah. I mean, what the last 6 stages of that race, I think you like either started or finished at over 9,000 feet.
Uh-huh.
So it's
Yeah.
just like doing Leadville like 5 days in a row. I mean, not quite,
It's
but
yeah,
close.
it was something. It was something, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think is somebody's listening, they're thinking about getting into gravel, you had a pretty fast rise up through the ranks in road first. What would you maybe give them as a tip of advice? Just how to get into this and how to start. Maybe they're a cap 4 or 5 and they're like, what do I got to do to try to just keep climbing?
I mean, definitely just race as much as you can, honestly.
Mm,
I mean, that's what I've been riding recreationally on the road, doing 2 or 3 hour rides pretty much just on my own for like a year and a half when I signed up for my first race. So I think I had a pretty decent aerobic base. I was 24 years old, racing all the Masters Cap 5 guys, and it just really wasn't fair to them. I don't think. Like I was just like in pretty good shape overall, and I've been riding a lot. So when I first got in my group ride, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is awesome. This is so fast. Like we're racing, like it just the adrenaline was like a whole nother level. So I was just like completely hooked, like right off the
mm,
bat, just signed up for as many races as I could, um, and uh, yeah, so that's the best way to get the experience is to I mean, you got to do your own, you got to ride your bike every day, and you got to, even if it's just for half an hour or an hour, but it's the consistency, and you got to do your solo training, so you can get that steady base in no matter what level of cycling you're at.
mm,
But also to learn how to race and to learn how the tactics and drafting and how to ride with other people is just, that's just something that comes with practice. So as much as you can
mm.
ride with other people, you got to do it, and racing is the best way to do that. Road racing, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gravel racing is, especially if you're new to it, you're probably just going to be stuck out there pedaling at 15 miles an hour for hours and hours and hours. And, there's only so much you can learn by doing that. But like, an hour long road race where you're able to like race the whole time, like you definitely get some valuable experience that way.
That's awesome. You had a lot of good points in there that people can definitely take home. What do you think? It sounds like you're trying to dial in things to help you still improve. Right now, what do you think is one of the main things in your daily routine that helps you have a success in cycling, or maybe even in life, because you've gone on some life tangents?
Um,
I want
checking
to
the
hear all the
boxes,
things that
like
you're just
eating.
thinking
I
right
mean,
now.
yeah, like yeah. I mean, eating healthy is good. Like making my own meals, staying hydrated, fueling and nutrition and hydration that's especially for the longer gravel stuff is a huge piece of the puzzle. But treating your body well on the bike as well as off the bike. So if you're going to be an athlete, you got to be kind to the temple, as it were. So that means, like I said earlier, listening to your body, but working on your flexibility, your core strength, doing some sort of, like, I like to go for like a little walk every day to stretch the legs out. As cyclists, we get like super tight hip flexors and like loosey goosey glutes and hamstrings and stuff. So I try to balance that a little bit, and some sort of resistance training, whether it's push ups or you're doing your sit ups or you're going to the gym, or like I like to do some rock climbing sometimes too. So just like not just you can be dedicated to cycling without like being totally like religious and just like totally focused in on it. It definitely helps. Just trying to live, I guess trying to live like a balanced lifestyle in general is important.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Do you focus on aerodynamics at all? And I'm definitely curious because that's obviously a huge thing that was in the gravel world of like aero bars, no aero bars. Now I'm using these short bars. You can't use those bars. You do. Is that super important to you?
Yeah, man. I mean, I try to be like the only race. I guess I could have had aero bars at Mid South. I guess they're never probably going to outlaw them at Gravel Worlds. But I didn't use them last year, and I think like they are against the rules at Unbound, and Unbound is for the pro field this year for the first time, right? We can't use aero bars, so I think in general the upper echelons of gravel racing are moving away from that. I think it makes sense because the races are getting faster, they're getting shorter. You're almost always in a group now. It's less of like the solo sort of ultra endurance bike packing feel where it's just every man for themselves. And now it's a lot more of like a tactical game of drafting, and you're racing at over average of over 20 miles an hour the whole race for the Midwest stuff. So I think aerodynamics are extremely important. But I think aero bars are sort of going away. So I try to be as aero as I possibly can without aero bars. So like, I mean, I'm using the full, like, flat bar. Venta makes like an integrated one piece bar stem thing. That's awesome. I'm wearing my, I've got an aero road helmet, full skin suit. Yeah,
Is that the Avis
shave the
helmet
legs,
still?
put my hair in a bun, the whole 9 yards. The Avis, the game changer.
I like that helmet.
Yeah,
Sick.
it's really nice. It fits
cool.
my head too. Some people don't like it. Some doesn't fit everyone's head, but it fits mine, and that's nice.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Finish this sentence. I never ...
Like uh can you come back to me?
Yeah, well, that's that.
Let me think about that one for a second.
I'll let you pass on one question. Okay, just got a couple more for you. What are you most looking forward to race wise this year? You've talked about a lot of different races, but what's the biggest one and what kind of why are you looking forward to it?
Well, I mean, you mean besides Unbound? Or,
Well, you can say, is it just because it's the biggest one? Like some people
yeah,
have, I don't want to see the answer, but like sometimes, people are going to a really huge race, but they might doubt themselves a little bit and they might pick one that's, I don't know, like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
really
yeah.
close to Gravel Worlds. Yeah. Like, I don't know. So Unbound, but
I mean,
why?
I
Just
do
because it's
love
the
Gravel
biggest.
Worlds. Unbound, yeah, Unbound is the biggest, but also because it on paper it suits me really well.
Hmm.
Um, so if I were like a pure climber or something, then no, it wouldn't be Unbound. It would be
Right.
Crush from the Tusher probably, or Rebecca's, or one of these races where. But for like a pure like diesel roller, like there's nothing better than Unbound, really. I mean, besides gravel, I like gravel worlds, but I like that course. The roads in gravel worlds are so much better. Like they're at Unbound, they're miserable, man. Like those roads are fucking miserable, just to be completely honest. But that's just like, that's what people love, is like, this is a masochistic sport. If you don't love beating yourself up, then you should be doing something else.
Yeah. Or everybody else who's listening, you can be soft like me and you can pre-check if there's river crossings. Like a good key is ask, hey, could I use road pedals here? And if they laugh at you, you might want to go somewhere else. Like I love gravel worlds, but I will say it was the first gravel race I ever did, and it totally screwed my mind of what gravel racing was. I've did other ones, and I'm like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, this is way harder than I had expected. So
Yeah, yeah. Gravel worlds is those Nebraska roads out there are just so
amazing.
smooth. They're incredible. It's like, they're not. It's not like a perfect hard packed surface, but just the pea gravel,
Yeah.
the soil composition, the way the roads are graded, and the way people drive on them just make them just buttery. So there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, there's no washboard. I don't even think that exists out there. And maybe there is
Well,
sometimes.
you can find it.
You
Usually, like
find
on the
it.
roads that are like close to town, they get a lot of traffic.
Okay.
Yeah, there's washboards occasionally, but it's not like it's like just 100 yards after the stop sign. It's not like the whole road.
Okay. I have some nightmares with that, but we won't go into that. How does that compare? Have you ridden the gravel that's out west for the national championship?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I'm excited about that. Yeah, I haven't ever done that race, the Robidoux Rendezvous,
Yeah.
that's out in the same town of Gering, I think.
Yeah.
I think my guess is it's real smooth. I've ridden like some gravel near North Platte, about 100 miles east of there. That was pretty similar to the stuff near Lincoln. I mean, I think in
Okay.
general, it's probably the soil's like a little sandier
Hmm.
when you get out west. So I think if anything, it'll be like, there'll be, I've heard there's like pockets of like super sandy stuff. But it's not going to be like rough, big rocks, or like I think in general, it'll be like pretty smooth.
I was warned that when I was talking to you about the difference in the locations on Messenger, one of the guys from Gravel Worlds was saying like a lot of the middle of that state is sand. He's like, you need to skip this whole site. Like, don't stop there. You'll hate riding there. I have like
Huh.
sand nightmares from Oregon Trail Gravel Grinder. There was one stage that was nearly all sand, and my bike
Oh,
was not prepared for that, and it was very sad. Like a lot of 5 mile an hour riding, and I was just
oh,
not feeling that.
miserable.
Miserable. Last question for you. What do you think are top three skills for success? And again, kind of bike or life. You've given a lot already, but I'm curious, maybe what do you like really, any that jump out? And I realize it's like a big open question, but
I mean, I started mountain biking a couple years ago,
mm,
and that really just opened my eyes to how bike handling works and how the bike moves on different terrain. And I think that's really important. Um, I think everybody who wants to race gravel should at least rent a mountain bike a few times and just try to go hit some single track when you first get on single track, it's like, oh, this is so narrow, I have no room to swerve or to avoid stuff or whatever. It's technical, taking the turns and picking your line, avoiding rocks, and cornering on loose surfaces. That's something that, you can try it on a gravel bike, but it's just, I think doing that kind of stuff on a mountain bike is just a really incredibly important skill to have. And it's helped my road handling so much too. So I feel, in crits and on road, steep, twisty descents, even just general stability, balance on the bike, like mountain biking is huge.
Let me ask a question, because this is actually something I was just thinking of. As I went from, there's a descent here, there's a race that I missed, and I was curious how fast these guys in the race would have gone, and it took me like 28 minutes, and the front group was 22 minutes. I'm like, oh wow, I'm getting shelled on this descent. And I was thinking about, if I rode a mountain bike though, wouldn't you ride that differently because that bike can handle like the terrain better? Or like, how does that transfer? Or is it just like also the speed? Like I'm clearly just slower, and part of it is being scared. Like I'm in this forest and I'm ripping 25 and I look and they're doing 30. And I'm like, how do they go that fast? Is it just
you're talking about on trail?
It's actually just like a steep.
Gravel.
It was more of like a steep, like kind of rocky. It's a road, but it's just not.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like, big, you can easily endo at many spots. And that freaks me out. And so I'm like, okay, maybe if I had a mountain bike, I would just get better at going around that at speed. Or like, what do you think you picked up from the mountain bike that could transfer to the gravel bike? And I do agree, after I ride gravel, I'm like ripping down descents here where, I see that, but I don't. What did you pick up from the mountain bike? Because I feel like now I need to get a mountain bike.
Yeah, you should get a mountain bike. So sell your gravel bike, get a mountain bike.
No, I won't do that. And maybe it's just that I suck off road, and like that's never going to be a plus. Like I'm trying to go from like a 2 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10. I'm trying to reduce sucking here. But I think that's a big thing for me. Like, what did you pick up from that you couldn't do on the gravel bike?
I think when you're riding a gravel bike, you're always underbiked, pretty much, unless you're riding like smooth gravel roads.
Okay.
Anytime you're going over really bumpy stuff, or you're going over rocks, or you're trying to steer with those like the little narrow bars, you're the bike isn't quite up to the task, I don't think.
Right.
And just having, there's something about like big wide flat bars and big squishy tires, and the extra give of the suspension that just like, I think it just, it allows you to push more, so like with the gravel bike, you're always like pushing the limit of the equipment when you're going on those descents, whereas like on the mountain bike, if you're riding a mountain bike and you're new at it, like that mountain bike can take whatever the hell you're going to throw at it. No problem. So the limiting factor is the skill of the rider, instead of like the bike itself. So instead of pushing the bike to the limit, you're pushing your own skills to the limit, I guess, is what.
That's perfect. So then I guess could I say then that when you're descending that fast on a gravel bike, like it is slightly scary because the bike that's how I feel. I'm like, this bike I should not be doing this right now. And I'm like, like I just put on some. Is that like
riding a road bike? It's because you're basically riding a road bike.
Okay, you make me feel better. I still know I'm slow. My friend's gonna laugh. The best way I can sum this up is I went mountain biking one time, and all I remember my friend saying is "less brake." I'm like, right. He's like, dude, just rip it. Right. The bike can handle it. I'm like, I suck at this,
but I can't.
Exactly, but I can't.
That's how I felt at Sea Otter racing those. God, it's so painfully slow, compared to what like those guys at the front are doing. I've ridden my mountain bike a lot in the past like 3 years, but I haven't been racing it for 15 years like half of the guys in the Grand Prix have. So I'm just like eons behind them, and I don't think I'm ever going to catch up. So no, even if you practice, you're still going to feel slow on a mountain bike.
I'm just trying to like be able to do races here where I can like I'm fine going uphill, which is funny, but I would be getting dropped on the downhill. So
I mean, and the other thing about descending on gravel roads too is I think even you doing taking your gravel bike on some mellow single track will help you with that too, just because it like forces you to pick a line and figure out how to make that happen. You know, as opposed to like, you know, you can haul ass down the gravel road when it's straight and flat, you know, but as soon as like you have to go around a loose turn or you have to avoid the rut or the rocks or whatever, then, you know, then you're going fast, and then it's like sketchy to try to make a move if you aren't really sure of how the bike handles. But it's single track when you're going at slower speed in general and just, you know, trying to pick a really precise line. I think that'll help you with the gravel descending too, for sure.
Dude, I appreciate you doing this. This was awesome. You have many
Yeah.
wise words, and stoked for your season this year and excited to see what results you come up with. And people will be rooting for you. I'm going to post your Instagram, and do you any other socials that you use like Twitter, or what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing?
Just Instagram. I mean, like
Cool.
Facebook, but Facebook, the only thing on Facebook is what I post on Instagram.
Cool.
And Strava.
Instagram. Yeah. Any last closing words?
No, man. I mean, yeah, just good to chat with you. Good to catch up with you. Hope to see you at Gravel Worlds again.
Gravel, and I don't think I'm going to make it there this year, but maybe I'll make it to that national championship. Oh,
there you go.
Plans are, yeah, it was going to be too long to be away, like spending a month in Nebraska. I was like, I get excited. And then I looked at the itinerary. I was like, that's a long time to be in Nebraska. No offense to your home state, but it's just far from home.
It's a long time to be in Nebraska. That's for sure. We are the last state. They did a recent survey on which states people would most like to visit for tourist purposes, and Nebraska is dead last.
No way.
It's the only one that has like nothing cool, you know.
Lincoln's way cooler than I expected. We stayed there after the first.
Yeah, but what were you expecting? You know?
Yeah, exactly, nothing. And I was like, "Whoa, there's actually people here."
Right.
Oh yeah, I can see that. It's not, you know. Well, come on, Nebraska. Let's go. Let's get up to 49 next year. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.